Right, so, as I said, we are now joined by lecturer at the American University of Beirut, Makram Rabah. Makram, can you hear me okay?
Yes, I hear you
so
fine.
I believe you're out there, you're in Beirut now. I mean, we're watching these with you. I'm sure you're there. Can you walk us through, I mean, when did this all sort of start? Was it quite recently? I mean, was it first a peaceful rally and then things went out of hand?
Well, ostensibly, this was a peaceful rally. However, the tone of the rally to begin with the speech of Hassan Nasrallah earlier in the week, has set the tone or the confrontation for this rally. Although the people initially didn't have weapons, but as soon as they were fired at, this whole quote-unquote peaceful protest turned into a gunfight. A gunfight which has Hezbollah and Amal, their other Shiite ally, against someone who is unknown. They are claiming that they have been shot at by the Christian side of the country. However, everything that is happening now is just another desperate attempt to divert attention from the real elephant in the room. And this elephant is Hezbollah, who has tried since day one to divert attention from the port explosion investigation and to turn this into a confrontation between themselves and the special investigator into the port explosion, Judge Bitar, knowing that Judge Bitar is the second judge to take on this portfolio, especially after Hezbollah themselves worked hard to remove the first judge, which his name is Fadi Souane, who has also indicated that the same people that Judge Bitar is trying to summon and to investigate are the same people who are responsible as high-ranking senior members of the government.
Okay, Makram, so with the two judges now already done, who do the Hezbollah want in there to actually represent them? Do they have somebody in mind?
Well, they want any judge which is just willing and capable of just telling us that this was just an accident and there's no real culprits within what they call the axis, the Iranian axis. And this is something absurd. You don't really need a full-scale investigation to know what happened. This nitrate that was stored in Beirut has military use, and the only real capable entity in Lebanon of using such weapons are Hezbollah or their Syrian allies, the Bashar al-Assad regime. All in all, regardless if Hezbollah is innocent, why don't they let people like Bitar or anyone else? The problem is that they have a problem with all judicial operations, be it the international community, which tried and revealed the real people who killed our former Prime Minister Rafiq Hariri in 2005, which directly indicated Hezbollah, or now when they are actually trying maybe to save their allies who are accused of corruption. However, this corruption is very important because through this nexus between Iran's weapons and the weapon of corruption, they have the ability to hide behind these ruling elites.
Right, okay, so that's fair enough. The politics there do stand, and we will talk about that, you and I, soon, I hope. But let's focus on today. Right now, we've heard so far that when the rally started, people were shot at from roofs in the Christian quarter. Is there any truth in that?
Well, they say that it's a Christian quarter. However, the direction of fire is very hard to know. However, knowing that the government can actually know what really went down because our police force and our intelligence services are really capable of doing so. But in the past, any real investigation which was never revealed always had Hezbollah in it. And we have the army there, and the army, if it was given direct orders from the cabinet of Najib Mikati, our current prime minister, could have actually stopped this confrontation from taking place. But all people involved, be it pro or the anti-Hezbollah factions, have the end game is to try to use these sectarian tensions and to mobilize their masses going into our elections, which is slated for the upcoming spring 2022. At the end of the day, this is a sectarian game which we, as a Lebanese citizen and as someone who grew up in the previous civil war, have seen time and again, and ultimately they don't really care about people. Their end game is to stay in power.
Indeed, indeed. Interesting. So, throughout some of the images that we've seen, not only through Twitter here on A News, but also on social media and other sites, we've seen people being removed from their homes. Do you know anything about that?
Well, they have not been forcefully removed, but they themselves have evacuated these homes because they are very or adjacent or in the sight of fire of this ongoing gun battle. We had a lot of people, innocent bystanders, being shot, and there's also combatants who were shot during fighting. Regardless if they're guilty or not, nothing justifies killing innocent people, especially over political issues. If there is a problem with the judiciary, there are proper ways and methods to petition the judiciary and to investigate Judge Bitar. These methods have been adopted by Hezbollah and their allies, and they have failed because they were not able to prove that Judge Bitar has not been objective and scientific in his approach, and thus I think they have resorted to violence, as they have done over and over again. And I personally do not think that we can disconnect what is happening in Iraq with what's happening in Lebanon, because also the Iranian faction there does not acknowledge that the vote was against them, just as in Beirut, Hezbollah does not acknowledge that they cannot bully the whole judiciary into doing what they want.
Right, indeed, indeed. Okay. Prime Minister McCarthy came out and, I don't know, almost not really say much other than please stay calm. What are your thoughts there? I mean, does he have control of the country, Prime Minister McCarthy?
He has no control whatsoever, simply because he is just a facade to the ruling elite. He has agreed to form this government under the assumption that this is a specialized, independent cabinet able to drive through reforms. What we saw yesterday in yesterday's cabinet meeting, that all of a sudden these so-called independent, capable bureaucrats turned into mouthpieces for their political parties. And our Minister of Culture directly threatened the cabinet that they will not allow Judge Bitar to stay in office. Ironically, this Minister of Culture is also a sitting judge. So these people don't really care neither about laws and neither about constitution. And Miqati, at the end of the day, has failed since day one, because this cabinet has been born dead, because he claims that he has the ability and has the will to enforce and to protect Lebanon's sovereignty, and what we see on the streets of Beirut is a direct breach of this.
As a Lebanese citizen, sir, you mentioned that earlier just a second ago, as a Lebanese citizen, I mean, or as other people in the... What does Lebanon need? I mean, how can it all change? It's quite complicated, your politics out there. What needs to change?
Well, as a professor of history who specializes in the modern history of Lebanon, and as I tell my students, it's about power sharing and it's about taking responsibility. In the past, the Lebanese have always claimed that their problems come from abroad. That might be true. There are external factors, but at the end of the day, different political factions, at what time or another, they have used outside forces in order to bully their way into power. What we need is a proper power sharing formula, and we should have a respect for the Constitution, and a Constitution that is able to accommodate everyone and make them feel part of this nation.
Indeed, sir. Well, let's hope that indeed happens. I'd like to thank you for your time, sir, and everyone here at A News
Thank you.
Wishes you a speedy, well, let's just say no more deaths in your country. Thank you for your time, and we hope to speak to you again soon. Thank you.